What's up, everyone? It is Ricci here, bringing you the F1 podcast, season 2, episode 26. We are recording this on December 14, 2022, right before the holiday season. It is starting to snow here in Canada. It is getting a little colder. Pond hockey is around the corner, hopefully. But all seriousness, we're here to talk about Formula One. So I'm here with my co-hosts, Andrew and Erica. How are you guys doing?
Doing awesome. How are you?
What up, what up, what up?
And if you guys didn't see, it was Erica's birthday a couple weeks ago. So saw the post on the gram. So happy birthday, Erica.
Thank you.
And as always, our Red Bull advisor, I don't know what your title is, Tyler Hatherell. Welcome back to the podcast. How are you doing, buddy?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me. Excited to chat some F1 in the middle of December. So it's been too long since the last race. So I'm going through withdrawal. So this is great. Looking forward to it.
Like
It's
withdrawal with go ahead, Erica. Sorry.
I was gonna say, hard to imagine this time last year we were lamenting a contentious win of Max Verstappen over Lewis Hamilton.
Yeah, Twitter figured that out the other day, and they were popping off. Great memes again.
Don't think Twitter's going to forget.
You lose.
Twitter
Not
never
anytime
forgets.
soon.
No.
Yes, it's true.
You think Ted Kravitz is ever going to forget?
No,
That's a negative.
he'll take that to the grave.
Speaking about forgettable, well, actually, this was not really a forgettable week, and it's only Wednesday. Lots of news to kind of talk about Formula One. I don't know where to start, but we thought that we were just going to have a little bit of a quiet kind of move into the next season. Things are going to be, most of the drivers I think all the drivers are now decided for next season. And then the dominoes kind of started. So at first it was Yost from Williams stepping down. And then after when he went, it was Binotto. Ferrari announced that Binotto will be leaving at the end of 2022. And within moments of that, Fred Vasseur from Sauber would take over. And then it just kind of started a domino effect. Forgot about mention Seidel is replacing at Sauber as CEO, and then I forget who's the last person. Andrea Stella, who's kind of getting promoted up into the McLaren system, is going to be taking over Seidel's position. So a lot of moves within a couple of minutes, and we kind of were joking before we started this week's episode where whoever is making the Formula One graphs of breaking news must be really tired and is excited for the holiday season. I'm going to open it up to the floor. What kind of surprised you? What change really surprised you? And I guess I'll turn it to whoever wants to go first on this one.
I'll say the first one that kind of jumped out to me. I was really surprised that Yost decided to leave the Williams team. I mean, obviously for a lot of team principals, CEOs, they only have a couple years to turn a team around and get the expected results, or then they're on their way. But for only being in the seat for 2 years, there's been a lot of good movement. I mean, last season was obviously a bit of a struggle, but there were some victories with George Russell, much better season having Alex Albon in the car, getting into the points a little bit more. Latifi, as much as he's not racing next year, did put out some better performances than I think a lot of people would have expected compared to the seasons past. So they're moving in the right direction. And obviously having Logan Sargent in seat for next season is inspiring a lot of confidence in what we will see in 2023. And I just looked at some of the comments on the post, but Williams has had a lot of turnover in the last few years. If you think about it, they've had 14 principal changes since 2018, which is a little bit insane because you had Claire Williams step down, and then there's just been a whole smattering of other people kind of rotating through the door. So hopefully whoever steps in to replace him will be there to, lead the helm, take them in the right direction, and stick around for a while, because I think it's a team that needs a bit of consistency if they want to see progress.
Yeah, and I think that was definitely the icing on the cake, because it was not only him that went, but it was also their their chief advisor as well left as well. So I don't know if there's some disagreements with some of maybe that the head of Williams, because I think there's maybe some discussions that the team will be sold, and maybe they just don't see Yost and maybe some of the senior management teams part of that philosophy moving forward. I mean, yeah, we did see some promising things, but overall, I guess maybe just directional changes that says, you know what, we still were last this season, even though we did get some points, but do we need to kind of maybe change the direction, especially with Audi coming into play in a couple of years and seeing some of these other changes, and like, you know, with the new regulations kind of made it a little bit more fair for some of the midfield teams, but Williams was still kind of towards the bottom of the tier. It sucks, but yeah.
I mean, you mentioned it, Ricci. It's interesting that after just 2 years at the helm, they've decided that it's time for a change in direction. I mean, you need some stability in an organization like that, especially in Formula One, where it's years upon years of building and development, and it takes a little bit more of a long-term vision in order to turn a team who has been routinely at the bottom of the constructors' standings into one that should be competing for race wins and at some point constructors championships. I mean, this is Williams. It's been a long time since they've been in that position, but that should be the goal for a team like Williams. And adding, you know, that uncertainty of leadership to the layer of, you know, your point of them maybe being sold just makes the future really uncertain for Williams. And it's hard for them to build that future with so much uncertainty from the ownership level all the way to team principal. So it's going to be really interesting to see what they're going to do. Really interesting ownership structure at Williams when you look at the other teams in the grid who are, you know, backed by these large, you know, global OEMs like a Mercedes, you know, like a Ferrari or a Red Bull, who's just so, you know, ingrained in sport at all levels. Williams is really in an interesting position, and they're currently owned by Dorlington Ventures, who's a venture capital firm. They're probably looking to capitalize on the success of Formula One over the last couple of years and cash in on that investment. So the future's looking really, really bleak for Williams, if I'm being honest, or at least very uncertain. And if you're a Williams fan, you can't be feeling too good about, you know, one, the potential sale, and two, you know, the exit of someone like Yost Capital and the technical director. So really interesting times ahead.
I think just really quickly, I'm just going to add on that, Tyler, especially since we saw some of the other changes, both at McLaren, Ferrari, and Sauber. They were able to find their replacements within minutes, or it was already determined. Like, it's been since the post came out on December 2nd, and we still have not heard of a replacement yet for Williams. So it's not really good news for, I guess, the people back at the factory heading into the Christmas season.
Yeah, it's like Haas, Williams is really the only private team to own. And, you know, venture capitalists, right? They want to get a quick profit return investment, as Tyler said, capitalize on your, you know, a quick turnaround in terms of the hype that Formula One has become, the additional revenues that have been associated with it, and then kind of getting out. I don't know if Logan Sargent's promotion maybe had to do anything with why maybe Yost wanted to leave in terms of direction of the team, because there were drivers out there on the market that, you know, could have been a better opportunity or a better solution for a second driver to Albon than Logan Sargent. You know, like a Nick DeVries, for instance, right? How he wasn't, you know, we were kind of surprised when he didn't get signed by Williams instead of going to AlphaTauri. I thought that would have been a really, you know, would have made sense, part of the Mercedes program, and going through, you know, that process, scored points with Williams, and it would have been a really good tandem between him and Albon. So I don't know, maybe if just Yost was tired of me, you know, getting listened on deaf ears at that point and wanted to leave. Plus, Sauber / Audi are really starting to do heavy recruiting. We saw that, you know, with Seidl becoming the new CEO, which I was kind of surprised about, leaving McLaren, which was a pretty, I would say, not comfortable position, in my opinion. I don't think Zach Brown was going to do anything with regards to firing Andreas in terms of car development. I'm sure they weren't happy about it, but Zach Brown would be that type of guy because he's had success with Andreas to let him go like that. So I'm thinking, you know, some of these moves are heavily invested based on Sauber, and don't be surprised if Yost goes to Sauber in some form of capacity within the next year or so.
Yeah, I think that's we can definitely see that. And, you know, especially with like Audi coming into the picture, we'll talk a little bit more about the situation at Alfa Romeo. But after that announcement came out, the second big announcement is obviously, well, actually before everything, Binotto announced Binotto's leaving Ferrari. And, you know, me, Andrew, and a couple of obviously Tyler and Erica, we've all talked about this offline, but I think this writing was definitely on the wall for Binotto, especially with how the season kind of progressed. This, he is a very good engineer and he can do really well. He's proven himself during the Michael Schumacher era. Just, I don't think he had that capacity in the team principal or the leadership position to really drive. And, at the end of the day, a lot of the mistakes that happened during the season fell on him and the engineers on the paddock wall. So, I was actually a little shocked on how quick it was, because if you guys remember the Ferrari statement, it said that they were going to, by 2023, I think by the first month, then they'll have their replacement. I didn't think that Fred Vasseur was going to come in right away. I said there is a transition phase, but we heard some names potentially that would have replaced Binotto, whether it would be Ross Brawn. There was a rumor Christian Horner was going to leave Red Bull, which, no offense, I didn't see that happening. Seidel was actually a reference, and even like bringing back some of the old Michael Schumacher era people like Jean Todt. Obviously Ross Brawn was, but Fred was the first. I think Fred is the first person to come back into the system, like first pick outside of Ferrari, and I think 15 years. Just really goes to show just like how interesting that the whole dynamics happen at Maranello. And I think, there were some rumors going on after that there was the leadership with the CEO and the head of Ferrari just like didn't have that support with Binotto. So I think Fred was able to have some of that connection already and just established himself in the team. And listen, he looks nice in a Ferrari jacket, not going to lie. That was a pretty clean photo. It's a quick trip to Maranello to get that photo taken. One thing I'm going to say is I'm also intrigued to see, obviously he's worked with Leclerc back when Leclerc was with Alfa Romeo. So I think there'll be some good connections there and they can build off each other. But
I'll just think how well he's done at Alfa Romeo with such a limited budget. I know there's a cost cap, but with how, there's obviously limitations in terms of the team size, and being able to do, so well in the constructors this year with, all the resources they had, and considering how many technical failures that they had when they were in points positions this year, I think he's going to do well at Ferrari. Considering, he does have the previous relationship with Leclerc, but I think once you give Fred some money, he's going to do wonders with it. And I'm sorry, but the people who had rumors about Christian Horner going to Ferrari was ridiculous. I can never see that man leave, the Red Bull team. He is the embodiment of Red Bull F1 racing. I understand. It would be weird.
Yeah, unless he's retiring completely from the sport, I don't see him leaving Red Bull anytime soon. Let's be real.
No way.
It'd be like Lewis going to Red Bull in a way. Like, do you ever picture Lewis leaving like a team for like Mercedes or McLaren? Never.
No, I would like to vomit at the thought of that at this point. Honestly, I'm like, oh, that's like, oh.
Well, let's just keep in mind. Let's keep in mind that Schumacher did go to Mercedes, but that was a couple years afterwards, and so like it's possible.
Oh, and they were a new team, right? They were a new team as part of the whole process.
And one thing else to consider is, even if you wanted to go, it would be a step down, quite literally, to go from Red Bull to Ferrari, not even from a performance perspective, but he's the team principal and CEO of Red Bull Racing, whereas I don't think CEO is on the table at Ferrari. So he'd be jumping ship to be a team principal. I don't think that's in his wheelhouse for all the reasons that you guys mentioned, but also just because it would be a step down from his current title at Red Bull Racing. So why would he want to leave all the success in Constructors' Championships right now when it looks like they're about to go on a tear, at least until the regs change again, to go to Ferrari, which is, well documented, the mess that's gone on there.
And let's be real, we were all surprised when Ferrari released that statement saying that no changes were anticipated to their team, because to have them in the midseason, like have Binotto say, we don't need to change anything about our strategy and approach, everything's working and we're going to come back swinging, and then to have the same cluster of mistakes occur in the second half of the season, and even some other blunders where you're sitting there like, how on earth is a professional team performing this way?
Or my favorite statement of all time, I think, if there's one thing that I remember, we always joked about this, but like when he said that the strategy for the last remaining 10 races that Ferrari could win, all 10, and turns out that it was 9.
Yeah, Red Bull won 9.
And 1 and one Mercedes. But so I actually just I forgot to mention this, but like, with Fred Verser coming in, he's the first, I said obviously 15 years, but the last person to come into the team was Jean Todt. So
interesting.
But yeah,
I think the most economically friendly though move was having Andrea Stella be named the new team principal, because McLaren won't have to make any new shirts or merchandise that have different initials on it. They can just keep the AS initials and recycle that gear.
Are they the same size? That's the big question.
Who knows? I'm sure they could fit into it.
We'll see. I don't know. McLaren's budget, they put it to good use this year, but not in a way that it was more fixing cars and stuff than I think it was anything on performance. So maybe they're going to be looking to cut some costs elsewhere. So that makes sense, honestly.
But so speaking about McLaren, I guess let's talk about it.
Yeah.
Erica, do you want to kick this off of what you think of the changes?
I don't know. I think it'll be interesting. I mean, Seidel has worked really hard the last few years. I think he definitely ran into some roadblocks from the higher ups. Like there's been a couple conversations where he had ideas for how he wanted to move the team in a certain direction, but obviously, unlike a lot of the other team principals, Zach Brown, the CEO, is the face of the team. So I think he holds a lot more sway than, say, Binotto did over at Ferrari or Vassar did at Alfa Romeo, things like that. So it's, I think, a great opportunity for him to maybe put his vision into action. And I'm excited to see what he does with the Alfa Sauber Audi package of things that will be going on. I don't know a ton about Andrea Stella, if I'm honest, because that's a name like you see him around, but he's not necessarily, like I said, you've got these other two personalities who really would be the only ones that they're talking to a ton of the time over at McLaren. So obviously there's a good amount of trust because it was a very fast move. It's not like they waited to see who would replace Seidel. They had this ready to go and pull trigger immediately once he stepped away. So clearly there's a good amount of faith in him from everyone higher up in the organization. So I'm excited to see what he'll do. Obviously, McLaren did not perform how I wanted them to this season. But with some fresh talent in there, and obviously not a terrible end to the season between the two of them. I mean, Lando finished 7th in the standings and Ricciardo finished 11th, despite how terribly he did in a few of the races. So not all that bad. I think it'll be maybe a chance to kind of revamp things and maybe make McLaren a little more competitive next year. But again, I'm always the optimist, so we will see.
I think I'll add there, some of the credit that goes to Seidel is that he was able to, break that curse of McLaren win their first race in how many X amount of years in Italy in 2021, and also landing Lando Norris to a multi-year contract, who's like the face of the team, for the face of McLaren's. Sorry, Erica's cat has joined the chat again, with reoccurring guests as well. But to speak a little bit,
crowd, Ollie.
But to speak about Andrea Stella, he's been with the McLaren team since 2015. He actually came from the Ferrari era, where he was performance engineer with Michael Schumacher from 2002 to 2006. Then he was with Kimi Räikkönen from 2007 to 2008. And he became the race engineer for Räikkönen during the 2009. And then he was race engineer for Alonso from 2010 to 2014. So he has, I think it's kind of like this similar with Binotto, like not the public face, but maybe he was more in the background. You didn't really see him, but then like he was able to rise the ranks and in McLaren when he joined doing their head of race of operations in 2015. And so like he's got a pretty impressive resume for someone who's not in the spotlight a lot.
And I will say, like, to add to that, race ops is obviously like a very difficult kind of role to take on. And even though McLaren wasn't performing high, they consistently had some of the best pit stops of the season. They were very well performing. And I think that's probably a testament in part to his work. So if he's able to build on that momentum elsewhere, that would be pretty sweet, I think. So,
imagine having such of a good season that you're complimenting your team's pit stops during the year.
You know what? I'm going to take the wins where I can get them, Cleary. I'm going to take the wins where I can get them.
So yeah,
we may not perform well at track, but hey, great pit stops.
You lose.
It was under 4 seconds.
Oh, have you know
Okay.
they went like sub 2 once and they were very low too.
That is true.
So
That's actually very
Yeah.
impressive with the new tires and how heavy they are compared to the old ones. Going a sub 2 is ridiculous. Impressive.
yeah.
How
So,
heavy are the tires?
I think they're 30 kilos or something, or just under 30 kilos. They're heavy. They're very heavy.
And look how
So
like they can move with such finesse, in under 2 seconds. So it's incredible work.
My favorite is I think Tyler, I don't know if you saw this when we were in Montreal, but they had a test where you could try to be like an engineer or like a pit stop crew, and just seeing some of the people fail miserably. Like I can't talk that I would do great. I'd probably do like 10 seconds too. But it was just really interesting to see some people try to pit. It failed miserably. I think just lastly on that, is there anything else particularly in these moves that oh well, I guess who do you think could go to Williams? I guess who do you think could go there? I can't really think of anyone left in the market that has really been talked about right now.
Well, I think Sauber as well, right? Like, remember, they do have Seidel now, but he's not the team principal. He's the CEO. So there's a vacant spot for team principal there as well. So going to be really interesting to see who, steps up and fills in that role in the interim, because obviously Audi's going to have a lot of say in who that's going to be. But same with Williams. There isn't really any clear candidates. So, first thought is you look at Formula 2, you look at some other series like World Endurance, DTM, maybe you take someone from the outside who's got a lot more experience and bring them up. But a lot of it is, same themes. There's a lot of question marks at those teams. Williams because of the sale, Sauber because of the impending Audi deal. So there's a lot of factors at play in terms of who's going to, step up and fill those roles. So, but one point I wanted to add that's kind of interesting to your point, Ricci, on anything else to comment on with all these team principal shuffles. I think it really puts the clock on McLaren to deliver over the next 3 years for Lando Norris. His contract isn't going to be forever. And with Audi coming in 2026, they're going to want to put together a strong lineup. And Lando with the Seidel connections is an obvious, pairing there. So I think it goes without saying either way that if Norris doesn't have success at McLaren over the next 3 years, he's going to look elsewhere anyways. But I think the fact that someone he has a great relationship with in Seidel is, going to this new team with Audi, is going to have these great aspirations, is going to be putting a lot of investment into the sport, is going to want to pair that team with a great driver, puts even more pressure on McLaren to deliver Lando a race-winning car in the next 3 years, because, he's not going to be content with midfield and the occasional podium forever. So I think that's an interesting wrinkle in all of this chaos amongst the team principals.
I think especially if McLaren doesn't get the car performing. I mean, Lando was so close to having his first win in Russia last year and then biffed it on tire strategy. That's my cat sniffing the microphone if you hear anything weird right now. He's very involved in this conversation. And I think he, like you said, Tyler, high expectations he'll have, and will definitely be reevaluating his future if he's not getting what he's looking for out of his career at McLaren.
In terms of Williams, I think a cool opportunity. I don't know if this would be a conflict of interest because their significant other is already on the grid as a team principal, but why not Susie Wolf at Williams being team principal, right? It'd be bring women into the sport, which would be a great opportunity. She was a CEO at Rocket Venturi Racing in the Formula E. I believe they've won a championship recently. And she was a reserve driver for Williams back in 2014 through 16, I believe. So she's got connections with the team. She understands a leadership role at the highest level of Formula, with regards to team management. So why not bring Susie Wolf? And I think that would be a great opportunity for her. I just don't know if it's a conflict of interest with Toto being at Mercedes, but it would spark for some fun competition within the household.
I think in a vacuum, she absolutely deserves it. I think the trick is the conflict of interest for sure. Especially, earlier this season, there was a lot of talk that with De Vries going to Williams, they were also going to be switching their engine partner to Renault. So if Susie Wolf isn't at Williams, can you really switch away from a Mercedes engine? Like that would make it, all the more complicated. So I'm all for it because I think it would create some interesting drama. But that's the first thing my head went to is Williams is in this state of disarray where there's so many questions. And I don't know if that, is the move that gets them to some more stability. Although I will admit, I think, she deserves a spot on the grid in the paddock in some senior role for sure.
I think it would be so fun to sit at the dinner table while that conversation goes down between Toto and Susie. Can I be a fly on the wall there? Can I please? Pretty please.
Do you think Toto still wears the same outfit like when he goes home, like 365, that white shirt, the black pants, like not even a short sleeve, it's always long and he rolls it up.
Yeah,
Never see him in a polo.
There's that scene in Drive to Survive where he opens his closet in the hotel and it's just 7 of those white shirts lined up. Like it looked like a TV show, like a cartoon. Like it's so funny. He doesn't have any other outfit, I swear.
Actually, I think it was Kim Illman that took a photo of him one day where he was just like in a sweater and like just like jeans or something, like going to the paddock. They're like, who's this guy? Literally. So speaking of which, I actually, this is gonna be fun. So on this segment part of the next part of like obviously this week's episode, we have a really special treat. At the start of the season, we made some predictions, and what better way than after a season, after what we experienced, we go back and see some of those predictions. And but before we even go into those, we can't comment right away. This is why Tyler is so great, graciously, not only as a Red Bull expert, but he's going to sit here and judge some of our predictions. And I think he's trying to find them right now. But no, he gave us his predictions, which shocker was all Red Bull winning, but like whatever. So we're going to turn not the camera, but the mic to Tyler. And so Tyler, myself, Eric, and Andrew obviously had our predictions on who we were going to think win or whatever, what's going to happen. So I want you to pick a best and I want you to pick a worst. You can take like whoever you want, like single us out, but basically the mic's yours. And just reminder, I am editing. So
good to know. Well, I'm pretty happy to be in this role where there's no risk. I get to dish out all the chirps, all the shade, and take no heat myself. I mean, it's the perfect role, really. So as arbiter, I've had a chance to go through some of these predictions. Some of them pretty great and pretty spot on. Others not so much. But we're going to start with Erica's new season nuggets is what they were called. Number 1, full credit. We're going to start with the positive here because we have to. Ferrari are back. Strong contenders push for the Constructors Championship.
Oh,
and you know what? I think that's pretty accurate. They did make a push. At the end of the day, they finished P2, but nowhere in here did it say Ferrari's going to win the Constructors Championship. It just said that they're going to push for it. And I think that's pretty fair. They led for the majority of the season. For all the, bloodshed and the negatives that went on at Ferrari this season, I think it's pretty fair to say that, compared to the last 5 years, they really did take a big step. So I think there's some credit due for that prediction. What do you guys think?
You are far too kind. Oh my goodness.
I like it. If the season finished at the first half, then that'd be spot on.
If you said win, it would have been worse. But I think
fair enough.
There's some slack here for being
back. I respect that.
It's like when you got your report cards. Like you did really great here, but however,
it's like the learning skills. You get an E for self-regulation, but like an S for participation or something.
Yeah.
Okay, so if that's the good one, it's not gonna get any better than that. These nuggets. I'm sorry, but the one I want to turn our attention to here that I thought was really interesting is new regulations equals leveled midfield. So far, so good. I think that's fair. Equals exciting championship battles. Not so much. And then the last one is the real killer. Equals surprise podiums. I think the podiums were basically run by Ferrari, Mercedes, the entire year. Lando with 1 podium, but I don't know if that constitutes a surprise. But otherwise, it was a lot of Red Bull, lot of Ferrari, a lot of Mercedes on that podium.
I mean, judging by the season McLaren had, that I would say that is a surprise.
You lose. It is. That's the sad part.
Yeah.
It's like that random movie that wins a movie at the Oscar. Like, wait, what movie are you?
And you just know it split the vote between everyone involved. It's not because it was actually good. Oh my gosh.
Exactly. Okay, moving the heat a little bit here. We're going to move to Ricci's crystal ball predictions. And you really can't look any further than the first prediction here because it's Hamilton wins his record-breaking 8th World Driver Championship. I can't think of a letter grade to give to this prediction other than an F. Not only did he not win his
I
8th
call
World
conflict of
Drivers
interest
Championship,
here.
but he also lost to his teammate. He also finished behind both Ferraris. And he also, for the first time in his career, went winless in an F1 season. So I'm sorry, Jono, but no points for this prediction. What do you guys think? Too harsh or fair?
No,
Fair.
I think though, if you ask people, if you ask Ted Kravitz, he's already won his 8th World Drivers Championship last year.
Oh my goodness. You ask Ted Kravitz, he's won every race this season.
Yeah.
The first perfect season in Formula One. All right, that's great.
That
Go
is
to the
so
next one,
good.
Nicholas. Have scored their first points in 2 years. Pretty bang on. I mean,
Boom.
first race of the season, K-Mag with that top 5, scoring points right off the hop. That's a
Can you-
pretty easy check the box there. Next one as well is pretty impressive. I'm not gonna lie.
Mhm.
Ferrari finishes second in Constructors' Championship and win 2 races. Now they won more than 2 races, but that's pretty bang on. That's impressive there. I think what was it? Charles won 3 races and Carlos with the win in Silverstone, so 4, but still pretty impressive there. John, I got to give you credit there. Another good one here. George Russell wins his first race in Formula One. Check the box. I mean, if we went through these midway through the season, I think we'd say there's no friggin' way that this is going to come true. But Mercedes with that crazy push and George with a pretty flawless drive and what was one of the best races of the year in Brazil.
It also helped that his teammate got his floor knocked around a little bit.
Very true. I wonder who he collided with to make that happen. I have no
I
idea.
couldn't tell.
I couldn't tell you. I think it was like Albon or Williams. Who knows?
Flashbacks for Albon having a collision with Hamilton at Interlagos.
True. I didn't even mean that. That was just meant to be in the joke. Poor Alex catching strays here.
Poor guy.
Moving to Andrew last. I think we'll break this up into chunks here because we have his drivers' championship predictions. So I want to start kind of with the top half here, and then some really interesting predictions going on at the bottom, actually, that I want to get to as well. So he had Max P1, Lewis P2, and Charles P3. I think that's pretty strong. Max did win. And while we mentioned Lewis did, fall back quite a bit, Charles was in the mix. So I think that's pretty impressive. What do you guys think? Any opinions or ratings on that top 3?
No, I think those are like safe bets. Like, as I think all of us kind of really saw this in the season, where it could be a Max and Lewis battle, and then maybe a Leclerc just shows up, comes in and gets a couple of wins.
Yeah, and I mean, to have Sainz P4 there, that's pretty spectacular, like kind of bang on. I don't think any of us really anticipated that, honestly.
Well, one did. I did.
Fair. It's literally on the screen in front of me. That's fair.
Yeah, credit there for sure. Middle of the predictions, I think, is really interesting. The AlphaTauris. I mean, you had Pierre Gasly P8, Yuki Tsunoda P9, and I actually think this isn't a pretty wild prediction. I think it's just reflective of how poor a season AlphaTauri had compared to what we all expected, right? I mean, who would have thought that they would have been, battling out for P9, P10, P8 in the constructors for most of the year? But that's what materialized. So pretty crazy.
Yeah, honestly, I'd agree with that. Like to have, what was it? Gasly ended up finishing 14th and Yuki 17th. Like what?
Yeah,
I'd say that's probably my biggest downfall. My predictions this year was I drank too much of the AlphaTauri Kool-Aid early.
Well, I like that you mentioned downfall your predictions because I think we have to get to what I think is the worst prediction of them all, and that is
it's not mine.
Nicholas Latifi, P18. That is absolutely ridiculous, I must say. I mean, I got to turn over to you. I got to let you defend yourself. I'm not going to comment any further. But you thought Nicholas Latifi wouldn't be last in the championship, and I need to know why. I need to hear it.
I had faith, Canadian boy. I thought Williams could have a decent car. I didn't think Zhou was going to be as strong of a rookie as he was. Who did I have P19? Did I have Schumacher P19, I think it was.
it should
He
be.
did. He
And
did.
Haas was a complete shit show last year. So, I had faith that Latifi was going to see some sort of growth, over the past couple, because, he did score some okay points last year. And I believe he did finish P18 in the constructors in the drivers championship last year, all things considered. So it was more so kind of an equal performance. But yeah, talk about a guy that I think really obviously really hindered Williams' performance, but I almost wonder if he wasn't in that seat this year and De Vries had his seat, where Williams would have ended up. Could they have fought somewhere in the midfield, P7, P6 instead of P10?
I think you're still being optimistic on them being where they are there, because Albon still didn't have a spectacular season. He was 19th, but
I would say, like, if Nick De Vries was there, they would have got double points. They would have been in the double point bracket. That's my take.
I agree. The memory that just sticks out to me amongst many for Latifi is that practice session in Japan where he seems to have forgotten where the track goes and he turns off to a runoff area and goes, I don't know what happened, guys. Tries to blame it on the car or like he just tries to come up with an excuse on the fly and you can tell he's just got nothing. It just perfectly encapsulates, the season of Latifi. But yeah, that's all I got. All in all, some pretty good predictions from the crew. Some misses as well, pretty inevitable, especially when there's a regulation change. I mean, so much unpredictability in a season like that. I think if you were to redo the predictions, say for next season, I would guess that people would be a lot closer because I think we're going to see some more predictable, development amongst the cars. But pretty interesting. Anything else to call out from anyone on the call? Any predictions that really jumped out at you guys, or any predictions that you're especially proud of for nailing?
I just have to say kudos to Andrew for almost nailing it exactly on the head with Lando and Ricardo. Like Lando was P7 in the championship and you predicted that. And Ricardo finished 11th and you had him 10th. Yeah. For, you did not have my optimism for McLaren. I definitely was overthinking how they perform, but you set a very valid expectation.
I appreciate that. No, and it's funny though, right? Because I've watched just little nostalgia purposes, kind of like when they did the preseason testing in Spain, that where they had no coverage at all. They only had kind of the reviews every day, and how McLaren went fastest in like the final weekend session for the initial preseason testing. All the high hopes, and they just botched it completely.
Again, I had hopes. They were misplaced, but I had them. So...
they were there.
These are so good. I'm sorry. No, okay. But on a serious note, I think one of my favorites is Erica's what to watch for this season. Number 2, old faces and new places. How will Bottas fare at Alpha, and how will Albon fare at Williams? And okay, so we talked about how Albon, how he fared this season, but like how all of us were completely shocked on how Bottas performed. He really took that car to another level where it shouldn't have been, but I don't even know where he ended up in the actual standings.
I think it was P10 in the championship.
Are you
standings.
He was. That is correct. 49 points, despite having 5 retirements.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's absolutely
so
wild.
Just to think, like what they could have done with a reliable car this season would have been quite interesting to see.
Well, and think about Zhou. He also had 5 retirements, and to have a Ricci who A, doesn't finish last, and B, like did relatively well, all things considered, with an unreliable car that even when he did finish a race had performance issues, is saying something.
Bottas had points in 7 out of the first 8 races until
and then only 1 after the summer break, right? Like the Alpha completely fell off a cliff after the summer break.
But was it a matter of banking on next year's development at that point?
A bit of that, and also the big storyline off the top of the season was Alpha was basically right at the weight limit. So where the other cars had weight to come off and they could bring that down throughout the season, we saw Red Bull do that. We saw Mercedes do that throughout the year and pick up some lap time. Alpha didn't really have any weight saving to cut down on because they were already, running a really lean car. And so their development kind of suffered throughout the year. We saw that like come the summer break, they had already gotten basically all the potential they could out of that car. And there wasn't really a lot of lap time left in it. And, they really struggled down the stretch. So part of that could be circuit dependent as well. But I think it's pretty clear that the development curve just wasn't there for Alpha this year.
For sure. I feel like at that point, I know that we're saying it may be track dependent, but if it's the entire back half of the season, there's more going on there than just the track. We had good variety. So
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, lol at that one. I mean, we were impressed with Bottas, but I was like, ooh, let's see what Albon does. And that unfortunately did not pan out.
Also, shout out to the way you framed it, because they're both just questions. So you didn't get anything wrong. They're just, how will they fare? That was very strategic. That was very well done.
Erica, did you do that sometimes on your it sounds like was it a technique you did it on exams, or just like, so what's the answer, and you're just like, what about this? And the professor's probably just sitting there, he's like, okay, yeah, all right, that's
well
fine.
It's not wrong. No, I don't know why I did that. I think it was more I had my predictions and then these were my questions for the season. But yeah, I don't know. My other one about the experienced drivers in midfield having a competitive edge. I don't think we saw a ton of points necessarily from some of those more experienced drivers, but we did see some really fun racing from them and some great jockeying for position, which was very entertaining. I still can't get over the straight line speed of that Alpine. I'm sorry. That was nuts, seeing like Alonso duke it out with people in that car on occasion. Like unexpected, quite frankly.
Also, this season had way more overtakes than last year. And I think the year prior, I know last 2020 was not really it was a season, but like significantly smaller. But yeah, the amount of overtaking and battle fighting, like even, the amount of times we saw Vettel go against Alonso, Ocon going against Alonso, Hamilton the fight. Yeah, we had some good tilts. What I'm not surprised about was I called Vettel's retirement.
Yeah.
I said if it's not a good season, he's retiring. And like, mid-season, he actually was, I don't know if it was that British podcaster he did an interview with, and he says, I'm gonna get Instagram when I retire. And then I guess it was you, Tyler, that sent me the Instagram first thing in the morning, and it's like Vettel, and then that was his retirement. So I was like, boom. But yeah, I think all great predictions, some hilarious ones. I can only imagine what next year's is going to get.
Nicholas Latifi finishing P18 again. It's going to happen eventually.
He might come back for a race.
Yeah, you never know.
Yeah, maybe he gets that P18, maybe P1. Never know. So I think there's a lot today. And we're wrapping up the season. So just want to wish all of our viewers a Merry Christmas and a Happy Holidays, and obviously a Happy New Year. I think I don't know. I think this might be the last season of the season, but we will decide. Oh, yes, Andrew, please go ahead.
We'll be doing one more episode for this quote unquote season. It'll be our version of the Dundies. Now, if you don't watch The Office, it's the kind of the awards that they gave out at the end of the year. So we're going to do our own Dundies. Fans, feel free to send in your nominations for some awards that you have this season, and we will be glad to share them with you on the pod.
Yeah, let's get some fun categories. That's all I gotta say. Maybe we go to like where do they go in The Office? They go to like
they go to Chili's the first time.
Is there even Chili's in Ontario?
No.
If there is, it's in an airport. I don't think they actually exist in the wild.
Be great if you guys just podcasted from Pearson or something.
We should go to a Swiss chalet. I feel like that's the equivalent of
I feel
Chili's.
like we could, if we took like a flight to the US, we could podcast it in probably the customs office. There, we'll be there for a while.
Let's go to Boston.
No,
Go to Boston.
I was thinking that Boston Arby's. What's another Canadian classic? Yeah,
gotta do it in a Harvey's.
Oh, I went to Harvey's on my way back from the Detroit Lions game this week, and my God, I love their onion rings. Anyway, that's my plug. Harvey's, please sponsor us.
I had the Texas McDonald's Whataburger, and let me tell you, that was pretty good. But still, Shake Shack is number 1, but that's not for this pod. Anyways, so yes. Obviously we're going to do our own Dundies. So please, fans, please send them in. But I've already give the spiel there. So yeah, we're excited, enjoy the holidays, spend time with some family, and get excited because the season's just around the corner. I think we're down to something like 80 something days now. Who's counting? But I think we had a lot of fun. Tyler, again, as always, thank you for coming on and helping us with this. And maybe we'll see you at the Dundies Awards, whether if it's at a McDonald's or somewhere, we'll figure out the location.
Thank you guys for having me. Always fun to come on and chat F1. Like I said, especially in the middle of December when we're all going through a little bit of withdrawals. So I'll definitely be writing in my awards for the Dundies as a fan. And little sneak peek, one I got that's a lock is the Nutella Award, and that goes to one Sir Nicholas Latifi. He's a lock. He's a lock. Give him the award right now.
Maybe that's like an honorary title. I got Nutella in my my closet, not my closet, my kitchen.
Perfect.
So anyways, that is this week's episode of the F1 podcast. It is Ricci here with Andrew and Erica and our special guest Tyler. Andrew, please send us off into the new year.
Thank you everybody for listening to the F1 podcast, season 2, episode 26. Yes, as Ricci said, happy holidays, everybody. Please spend this time to rejuvenate, relax, and get caught up on the next upcoming F1 season because we're only 80 some odd days to preseason testing in Bahrain. But until then, have a wonderful holiday season and see you on the flip side.